Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel, and on today's video, I have a good one for you. This is a really good update from Under Armour. Guys, this is the Velociti Elite 3. And of course, we are going to get into like the entire shoe, what it's all about. But as far as updates go, when I compare the Velociti Elite 3 to the Velociti Elite 2, the difference is night and day. And although these are both designed to be race day shoes, I did find that the Velociti Elite 2 was just more suited to workouts. And I'm happy to say that the Velociti Elite 3 definitely inspires me to run faster. So let's get into it. Alright, thanks for sitting through that intro, guys. Oh, by the way, Under Armour was good enough to send me this pair of the Velociti Elite 3 for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you're going to be able to pick up a pair of the Under Armour Velociti Elite 3 for $250. So it is right there in the ballpark of super shoes, which makes sense because this is Under Armour's super shoe. Before we get into the shoe itself, I can tell you that there is some pretty impressive history with the Under Armour Velociti Elite 3. Now, if you cast your mind all the way back to April of 2025, you know that Sharon Lokedi won the Boston Marathon in 2 hours, 17 minutes and 22 seconds while wearing the Velociti Elite 3. So this shoe has been proven to, be pretty good. So let's get into a few specs. And the Velociti Elite 3 has 37.5 millimeters in the heel, 35.5 millimeters in the forefoot for a 2 millimeter drop. That is the lowest drop of running shoes, or the lowest drop super shoe that I've ever used. We'll get more into how that drop feels in just a second. But in the US men's size 9, Under Armour claims that the Velociti Elite 3 will tip the scale at 7.8 ounces or 221 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it weighs an even 9 ounces, which is 256 grams. So, it's a little lighter than some of the competition. It's not as light as some of the other competition, but, still light enough to win the Boston Marathon. So let's start at the top and work our way down. And I'm going to hold that up. And you can look on the side of this heel collar. You can see it is just very thin. There is barely any padding at all. Like, there's enough padding. I never experienced any rubbing, at least on the side of my heel. But when we get to the back, like right here on the back, there is a lovely amount of cushioning, and it makes it very comfortable right here on your heel. The heel counter it's semi-rigid. It seems like I can push it in quite easily when I'm like just touching it right now. But the back of the shoe is shaped very nice. There is a nice little indent for the back of your heel to just fit in. And all in all, the Velociti Elite 3 fit my foot very well. Now, that is probably because of this new upper. It is a Leno weave stretch upper, and it does stretch around your foot nicely. It's very breathable. It's kind of coarse to just touch with your fingers, and that's okay. I mean, you're going to be wearing socks, so I wouldn't worry about that. I will say that I really did like this upper. I liked how it felt on my foot, and I liked the lockdown that the shoe gave me. Now, you can see right off the bat, Under Armour is including these serrated locking laces. So when you tie these down for race day, you have that confidence that your shoes aren't going to come untied, which is probably one of the worst things that could happen on race day. Actually, I can think of a few other worse things, but that would be a quite bad thing. The tongue on the Velociti Elite 3 is, it's a race day tongue, right? It's super thin. We have some extra padding right here on the top. So when the laces are tied, they're not going to bite into the top of your foot right there. The tongue is thin. It is not gusseted. We have one lace loop right here on the front, kind of like halfway down the foot. And then the tongue is very breathable on the sides. It's just like a very thin mesh. Now, this Leno weave stretch upper does have some kind of thicker bits just to give it a little bit of structure. Obviously, you can see it coming down the center of the toe box here. There's an underlay coming around the toe box, and of course, got that reinforcement along the eyelet chain. All that is just contributing to the Leno weave upper, just giving you that support, and it seems to work quite well. Also, I like how this looks. I love this big Under Armour logo right here on the side, and I love how simple everything else is about the shoe. I think it just looks sharp. Now, Under Armour is using, it's a dual density midsole. So on the top, we have an HTPU, and on the bottom, we have a supercritical Hover Plus midsole foam. Now, you probably remember from last year, in fact, I still have it right here, Under Armour was using their Flow midsole foam, which is just, quite dense. And then we got a rubberized EVA on the bottom, but they have done away with the Flow. And I think that was a good choice. I mean, the Flow was probably a good foam in a different kind of shoe, just not in a race day shoe. And now we have this HTPU and this Supercritical Hover Plus, and it's actually really soft to actually touch. The HTPU seems to be a little softer than the Supercritical Hover Plus, but that's really not surprising. Generally speaking, when brands use a dual density setup for their midsole, we are using the softer foam on top because it gives that nice plush step-in feel, and then a slightly firmer foam on the bottom just to give that control and a little bit of a snappier toe off. I know I said that this foam is like super soft, and well, let's just come back to that in just a second. Put a pin in that. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a super shoe without a carbon fiber plate, and the Velociti Elite 3 has a full-length carbon fiber plate, and if I turn it over, yeah, you can see just this big cutout coming down the middle with a carbon fiber plate. That plate and the foam together make this a very, very rigid shoe. Oh, now one other thing while we're just looking at the bottom of the shoe, I already showed you on the Velociti Elite 2, we had that rubberized bottom. Now we are using rubber, which I would imagine, you know, it's a little more traditional, but I don't know, is it going to give you more grip? Is it going to be a little lighter? There doesn't seem to be a lot of rubber here on the outsole, but again, that's not surprising. This is a race day shoe. It's not going to last forever, but it's going to last a good amount of time. Let's see on this lateral heel edge. Yeah, I am seeing a little bit of wear just right where I touch down when I am not like doing intervals, but that's not surprising. The making of this review, I would say I've got about 40 miles in this shoe at the moment. So with that in mind, it seems to be holding up extremely well, and I probably should have just rinsed these off before bringing them into the office because they are filthy. So let's talk about ride, because guys, I already said this foam feels soft, but this is not a soft riding shoe. At least it's not a soft riding shoe in the way that some of us expect a super shoe to feel. It seems like we're going in a direction of super shoes being like very soft, very plush. And that is not the case with the Under Armour Velociti Elite 3. It is quite firm, but it's not firm in the way that it beats you up. I never once thought that this was too firm. In fact, it feels very responsive. Not in the way that I am feeling the road feel. I mean, we do have quite a bit of stack, but I think responsive in a way that I have a carbon fiber plate and I have a somewhat denser foam than I'm actually used to with other super shoes. Maybe except for one, but we'll get to that in just a second. Now, as far as performance goes, when it comes time to pick up the pace, how did the Velociti Elite 3 feel? And I have done intervals, I've done strides, and I've done 2 tempo runs in this shoe, and it picks up the pace very well. Now, I did say I was going to return to the drop, the 2mm drop, and I have to say I am not sure I'm the best person to actually judge the drop, because I was expecting to have, you know, maybe sore calves after running in the Velociti Elite 3, and I didn't at all. But that 2mm drop was not as noticeable to me as I thought it would be. Now, for some of you that might be sensitive to a lower drop, maybe you might have to kind of warm up and slowly get used to the shoe. But for others of you that like a lower drop, this is really going to just be the ticket. Because can you think of another super shoe with a 2mm drop? And obviously we've got the Ultra Vanish Carbon 2 with a 0 drop, but everything else is 6, 7, 8. So I think there is room in the market for the Velociti Elite 3 for those of us that really like a low drop super shoe. Now, one more thing on performance. I will say that I think this is probably related to the softness of the midsole foam that I generally don't like, all right? I generally gravitate to a softer midsole foam, especially in the super shoe. And because this does not have that, I didn't get that same bouncy feeling from the Velociti Elite 3 as I do from maybe some of the other competition. So I would say that the Under Armour Velociti Elite 3 is the type of shoe that it rewards the work that you're putting in. It's not one of these super shoes that you can just sit back and just, you know, kind of bounce your way to the finish. I actually think the shoe is giving a very high amount of energy return. It does feel like a super shoe, and I think it's going to work best for maybe those runners that like the lower drop and maybe a slightly firmer ride. Now, a ride that it actually reminded me of was that of the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5. If you remember my review of the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5, you know that I said it was a slightly firmer ride, and I kind of felt the same way about it. It was snappy and it rewards the work that you put in. It doesn't kind of give anything for free. And of course, if you are looking to pick up the Under Armour Velociti Elite 3 for $250, you might also be looking at the Hyperion Elite 5. However, the Hyperion Elite 5 costs $275. Now, we do have 40 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop, so a slightly higher stack height. And in my size, the Hyperion Elite 5 tips the scale at 238 grams. So it does weigh 18 grams less in my size than the Velociti Elite 3, but still, it's quite a bit more expensive. Next up, if you're going to be spending $250, you might also be looking at the Saucony Endorphin Pro 5. Now, the Endorphin Pro 5 has 39.5 in the heel, 31.5 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. So again, 8mm drop, 2mm drop. If you are after that low drop, you're probably not looking at a shoe with an 8mm drop. But either way, the Endo Pro 5 in my size tips the scale at 258 grams. So it does weigh 2 grams more than my size in the Velociti Elite 3, but the Endo Pro 5 will only cost you $240. So it's $10 less than the Velociti Elite 3. And finally, we cannot forget about the Adidas Adios Pro 4. Now, this is competition because we have a top of the line super shoe And the Adios Pro 4 has a completely different ride from the Velociti Elite 3, but you are still going to be tempted because they are the same price, $250. Now, the Adios Pro 4 has 39-33 for a 6mm drop, and it's light. In my size, it tips the scale up 233 grams. So the Adios Pro 4 is 23 grams lighter than my size in the Velociti Elite 3. So guys, I know this is not an easy decision. If you are looking for a race day shoe, you have so many options out there. I certainly don't envy you. However, Under Armour has done a phenomenal job updating the Velociti Elite 3 from the Velociti Elite 2, and I think it can be a contender. I just think it's a little different from some of the competition out there. But obviously, Under Armour has done their research, and this shoe is going to work for a lot of people. And again, it was good enough to win the 2025 Boston Marathon. You cannot take that away from this shoe. But guys, now it's your turn. I want to hear from you. Are you interested in picking up a pair of the Under Armour Velociti Elite 3? Have you run in any other Under Armour running shoes this year? Definitely drop a comment and let me know. But for now, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the Under Armour Velociti Elite 3. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.